Hey everybody, welcome to the Real Birding Podcast, the show where we break down the world of birding and talk about our own birding adventures. I'm Will Keller, coming to you from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
And I'm Caleb Putnam, also coming to you from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
We're trying something a little bit new today. We actually happen to be in the same town right now, so let's film it together.
Good to see you, man. It's been a little while.
It's literally been since Christmas, so yeah, I'm excited. Let's jump right into our bird quiz. Last week, we played for you the song, or the call, of a bald eagle, and Dan Kirk got that right. Good job, Dan.
Shout out, Dan. Well done.
We always talk about how the in Hollywood and whatnot, they always play the red-tailed hawk over the bald eagle. So I was wondering if that might catch a few listeners and think, what is that? And then they think, oh, dumb, when it's a bald eagle. But anyways,
and we need to acknowledge that. Why does the bird that we chose as the national symbol make such a wimpy noise?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be so much better if it made the scream of the red tail?
It really is, and they're actually not all that vocal. So whenever I hear it, sometimes it does make me think, what is that? Oh, I remember it. You know what I mean?
Or it's going to be like some little tiny bird, and then it's, oh yeah, that's bald eagle.
That's right. So we are going to play for you the song of a North American bird, and if you think you know what it is, drop the name in the comments, and you might get a shout out at the beginning of next week's episode. Let's do it. That is the sound of March in Michigan. I can tell you that much. Otherwise, fun show. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. So, Will, I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but we got sweat stains in the hat. That is a sign of the times.
That's a little embarrassing, yeah. But should we get new hats? Yeah, mine's getting sun bleached too.
Is it already getting sun bleached?
That's actually a good thing to bring up. If you guys like these hats, we've been thinking about making more of them. So if you want to buy real birding merch like this shirt or the hat, or we might make hoodies or something, let us know, and we maybe we'll do a little shipment of them.
I'm down.
Yeah,
we got Real Birds, the actual LLC, and then we got Real Birding Media, the channel.
Yeah, the subsidiary. This is our mega corporation of Real Birds.
That's right.
Well, dude, it has been a fun week in birding. And before we even get into the layers to this story, Brown Pelican has been in Michigan for almost 2 weeks now. And I have been planning this trip to Michigan for about a month, and I've been watching the reports like, oh, the rough is in Berrien County. I'm not going to be able to get the rough. Dang it. Oh, the Brown Pelican's in Michigan. I'm not going to be able to get the Brown Pelican. And I was very bummed out last week when this bird took off, but then it showed back up somewhere else, and I got to see it today. So we're going to get into that story. Do you want to start us off?
Oh, I don't even know where to begin. Okay, I've been trying to find state birds in Michigan for probably roughly 30 years now, almost 30 years. And I have been waiting through these decades to have a chance to find a brown pelican. I've actually had a couple chances, but the bird didn't stay around long enough because they just, this is an ocean bird. They rarely come inland. So I've chased it a couple times. There was a Lake Macatawa in Holland, Michigan report. We got on the boat and zipped around the lake, and it was already gone probably 2 days earlier. Our buddy Rick had one in the aughts, like 2004, something like that, off in Lake Michigan. And I wasn't necessarily around or in the scene, so I missed that opportunity. And then before that, I think there might have been one other, and then there was the Lake Erie bird in like 95 or something like that. And it was like sitting on a buoy, had to kayak out. I've heard about it, but I wasn't around.
So suffice to say, as far as difficult birds go, the ratio of times this bird has shown up to actual chaseable records is extremely low.
Yeah, it's a low probability bird. And so when I found out that this one was in Bay City, I was like super excited. I'm like, I definitely am going to go up there for this thing if it sticks around. I could not go the first day, so I was kind of anxious watching all the reports. And thankfully, I think it was the third morning. It actually had been there for like 7 days or something by the end of it, and the fishermen in the river knew about this, but it only reached the birding community like 4 or 5 days in.
Right.
So on what turned out to be the final day, I drove up there after seeing the first report at like 7:30 a.m. Right at dawn, somebody said it's still here. So I drove up. Took me like 2 hours to get there. Couldn't find the bird. It was gone. Like it was up in the channel somewhere, but you couldn't get a vantage point.
It's the worst feeling.
So I'm just like, oh, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So I'm standing there and I'm trying to stay aware that I have to keep my eyes on the sky, because good chance it's going to come flying through at some point and maybe not land. And if you aren't looking at the exact right moment, you miss it. So I'm standing there talking to this guy, the I don't remember his name, and randomly I look up and I'm like, there it is.
Oh my
it's
gosh.
just flying all right over us like this. So we grabbed the scope out, I get a couple photos. And the pattern has been it like flies down the river and it lands in the river like a mile or two down, and then you can just go to the city park and just, I mean, people actually handled the bird because it had a hook in its leg. There's photos of this.
Jack and Oliver Q.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, and Mark Hubinger was also involved in that. So they helped the bird by getting the hook out, and it was tangled up. And in any event, I was expecting it to kind of go put down in that spot. I watched it in the scope, and I kind of it was high, and then it looked like it went down behind this bridge, and then I'm like, oh, okay, so it's just going to land there. I'll just drive down and go get it.
Sure.
Never seen again. We drive down there and it's gone
until
for like, what was it, like 2 days, 3? So I saw it at 10:01 a.m. and we spent an hour to 2 hours looking down the river, couldn't find it. I come home, and in the evening hour, somebody posts a photo of a brown pelican that looks just like the one we saw 63 miles away in Lake Lansing.
Yeah.
And it was, if you look at the direction that it had to fly to get there, there was a really strong north-northeast tailwind, like a 20 to 25 mile. I was freezing my butt off in that wind, pushing the bird right toward the lake. So at first I'm like, that can't be, but there's that's plenty of time. And there's not a brown pelican thing going on this year.
Right.
Like you typically, if there's like a big push of them coming inland, like Missouri will have one, Ohio will have one, or we'll all get one. It's not like that this year. This is an odd bird.
Yeah.
So
and if we look at the photos of this bird, let's see, we pull it up here. If you look at the pattern on the bill of this bird, it's a unique pattern, and they were actually able to nail down that this actually is, without almost any question, the exact same individual.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that Ryan LaRuffa, who's a hardcore birder and lister, was there and took photos of the bird and was able to get the word out almost immediately. So I was like, oh my gosh, the bird went inland. It's gone. I'm flying out tomorrow. So I fly out the next day. We know the bird is being seen all day on Lake Lansing. And I'm like, I'm going first thing tomorrow morning. So today, so just real quick, I get off a plane yesterday. I'm still getting reports of this bird, and I'm like, there's no way that I made a trip for one weekend to be back in Michigan this year, and I'm going to be able to get a bird out of it. Unreal. I drive up this morning. My dad let me borrow his car, thank goodness. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to go. I get to the spot with the boat launch. There's one birder there looking. He does not seem to be on the bird. I'm like, oh, please tell me this bird is still here. I get out. I go to grab my scope. I realize I left my tripod at home. So I'm going to have to scan this entire lake with just my binoculars.
And it's a far, the docks on the other side of the lake, it's going to be easy to not be able to see the bird.
It was way too far. And with heat shimmer and stuff, you wouldn't have been able to see it unless it was swimming in the lake or flying over. Within 30 seconds, this brown pelican comes tearing out from the other side of the lake, is flying over our head, and then lands 20 feet in front of me, just this isn't my photo, but just like this photo right here. So I actually managed to have one of the best looks of probably anybody of this bird, and I totally lucked into it. I feel so lucky, dude. I tried to.
There was people in Bay City that were there when I saw it that didn't get it.
Wow.
And we were all like, oh, don't worry about it. You'll get it downriver here. And they left without the bird because we couldn't find it.
Downriver, but way downriver.
Yeah, like 60 miles downriver.
Or upriver. That's hilarious.
I also, I got to tell you this. When I was watching the bird working its way up, kind of upriver so it was about a mile away from me in the scope, and I was getting great looks as it was doing these moves and kind of and in the background, I see like 6 or 8 other birds in a flock, and they're white with black wingtips. And I'm suddenly like, am I looking at 2 species of pelican in Michigan at the same time, like in one scope view? I'm like, it cannot have happened before, right?
No way. You'd have to ask Rick. Maybe the thing is,
they weren't as common back then. White pelicans were not that common back then.
Even now, I did a big year in 2021, and I missed white pelican. Like they just weren't really around. Like,
interesting.
Like they were just like not as gettable back then. Or they're kind of like a seasonal bird, I guess. I don't know. They come and go.
If you wanted in Michigan now, white pelican is gettable gosh, many months of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had a helicopter, you just go out to the islands where they're nesting out in Lake Michigan up there between the Door Peninsula and the Peninsula Point, whatever that is, Stonington.
Yeah. Well, let's do this then. White pelicans. Many people won't even be aware that there's any pelicans in Michigan, let alone brown pelicans. What is the history? Because you've been birding in the state longer than me. What would your have thought have been in 1990 if you heard there was a white pelican hanging around?
Well, they were okay. If like in the early books, it was not being found in Michigan. It wouldn't have been. Neither pelican was here. And I think it was in the 90s on the colonial waterbirds out in Gull Island, between the Door Peninsula and the Stonington Peninsula. I don't know if we want to map it, but
yeah, let's do it.
So there are folks who study the colonial waterbird. I don't know why I'm blanking on words here. There are folks who inventory colonial waterbirds throughout Michigan and throughout the Great Lakes in general for federal grants and monitoring and stuff. They started to notice a couple of pairs of these things. I want to say early 90s. Yeah, zoom in right here. And this colony eventually blossomed to like hundreds and hundreds of pairs, and they're doing really well. So now, instead of it being a rare migrant and wintering bird, they're just coming through lower Michigan in large numbers. And this species has a propensity for going like 50 to 100 miles from the colonies to forage. Mm-hmm. So they'll just fly across the lake, or, the non-breeding birds will show up at Point Mouillet on Lake Erie. Yeah. And sit there all summer, like hundreds of them.
Well, tell me that story of the white pelican population in Montana.
Well, that's where they're from. I mean, this species is a northern Great Plains bird. Mm-hmm. Even in the state of Montana, where it's right in the core of the range, really abundant. I think there's only 5 sites that they nest at. But yet you'll find them throughout the state all summer. Mm-hmm. So you would think they're nesting everywhere, but they're not. Mm-hmm. So there's 5 lakes that have colonies, I want to say, and they'll fly, like I said, 50 to 100 miles in a day. You'll see them in huge numbers on lakes.
But that's not where they're living.
They're not living there. They're just going there to eat, and then they fly 50 miles back to the colony for the night.
So you think they do that every single day? They don't ever do like a Lace and Albatross 2-week trip, and then they come back to feed their young?
I mean, it could easily do it. I mean, for the record, this is the largest wingspan of any land bird in the Americas.
And one of the heaviest in the world, right?
That I don't know, but it's like a 10-foot wingspan. This is like a condor size bird.
Huge.
Humongous. So, and then they sit out in the lake. Nobody's going to be able to mess with them out in the middle of the lake.
Matter of fact, I bet we get a pretty good visual of a American white pelican wingspan.
One of the other really neat things about white pelican is they forage not by plunge diving into the water the way the ocean ones do, like brown pelican. They will sit on the surface of the water and form like a ring, and they'll work the prey items into a small concentric circle like this, and then they all sit there like hungry hippos, just nabbing it from a little bit on. It's a totally different foraging style. White pelican is a freshwater bird. Brown pelican is a marine bird, is a saltwater bird.
Even though there's many places where you can find them both together.
And I'm not saying they don't ever switch. Like white pelicans will be in the ocean during winter at times, but that's not their main thing. They're a freshwater bird. So, getting them together is not that normal, especially in a state like Michigan. I mean, come on.
Yeah. We were talking before we were recording about why is it that you wait 30 years to get a bird and I wait 5 years to get a bird? I've only been hardcore listing for 5 years, and I've only been in the state 3 of those last 5 years. So I think I've gotten pretty lucky, but the point I was bringing up,
you didn't pay your dues, man.
I didn't pay my dues. I'm paying my dues with other species.
That's true. That's true. You've gotten shafted on a few things I can think of.
Yeah. I'm missing swallow-tailed kite still, which is a good bird, but 5 years birding in the state, you should be able to get swallow-tailed kite, right?
Nowadays, but back when I had to earn one, no.
Back in my day.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Oh man,
it's grains of truth. But like bird distribution really has changed a lot. These 2 species are not outliers. There's all kind of things like this that, and then there's also ones that we got them back in the day that you all might not get. You know what I mean? They kind of can go both ways.
Oh yeah, bobwhite. You have bobwhite for the state, right?
They were all over the place when I was a kid.
Yeah,
even up in good old Lapeer by the base of the thumb, Flint area.
Yeah,
and even further north than that, dude. They were they were around. You just, as a kid, you're driving around dirt roads with big grassy fields and Bob White all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2001, gone.
Yeah.
The only ones here introduced or escaped hunting birds now.
To the best of our knowledge.
Maybe a fodder for a future episode right there.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. In northern Indiana, just across the border from Cass County and St. Joe County, they're not even review birds. So those birds are countable. And John Cassidy, actually, a few years ago, I remember he reported a bobwhite just across the border in Michigan. And he said, for what it's worth, these are countable and they're not even discussed.
I didn't think about it. Yeah.
Literally a mile south of here. So my friend Talis and I, actually, we went down and looked for that bird and we couldn't hear it or see it or anything.
Interesting.
But my logic was, if we could get this bird and then build up over the years enough evidence that it's possible that there's a sustaining population here, maybe we can count this in the future, but it probably is the last chance. You know what I mean?
It's analogous to the fact that I will never have a chance at Eskimo curlew or Bachman's warbler or ivory bill. They just, now that's an extreme example because they're extinct, but I actually have to acknowledge one other thing. This whole idea that you get south of the border and now they're all universally accepted as wild birds and so on, that's challenged. I talked to biologists in South Carolina. There are some who believe that all of the populations, except perhaps Florida and the tropics, are threatened and have the same status as what Michigan has. I don't know what's true in that case. I don't take a strong position on it, but the bird is in trouble. That is clear.
Well, from a listing standpoint, and I know our listeners probably could give less of a crap about listing, but some of them will. But
it's fun. We have fun listing.
The problem with bobwhite, though, is that it's so easy to get your hands on bobwhite as like a poultry animal. You know, you can buy chicks and people plant them for hunting. People raise them for eggs, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
A tiny, like half-inch egg or whatever?
Yeah. You can see them. There's people like famous people on TikTok that they have like 50 quail because you have to have a lot more.
I was going to say, that's like a 50 egg omelet right there.
It really would be, especially for me. I got a voracious appetite.
Same.
Yeah, but from a listing standpoint, it's really muddy waters. And it's sad. I wish we had a better sense of it, because we would actually probably know how to preserve these species a little bit better if we actually understood where their natural population stopped and started, you know?
Yeah. And that could be another episode later down the line, but the DNRs are trying to do their best with these things. There's not much they can do, is the fact of the matter. It's the habitat is on a range wide scale, and there's other things at play that are out of people's control.
Yeah.
Like there's just not enough productivity occurring. And anyway, that's for another day. Yeah. But you know, why did I have to wait 30 years for brown pelican in Michigan and you get to see it in 5 years? And I think the take home here for me is that it's like if you're sitting at a slot machine, just pulling. If the chance is like 1 in, I don't know, 100,000, it might take 5 years of pulling before I get it. But the next person walks up and hits it on the first pull. But it's not, there actually wasn't anything other than randomness going on, or that's not the right word, but that's how probability works, right?
Broadly, I think you're exactly right, but there's more factors at play now because there are so many more birders and so many more channels for information to get dispersed.
Well, plus I'm way better at this than you are too, right?
Well,
isn't that what the?
I might have an objection to that as well. No, I'm just kidding. No, but you know what I'm saying. Like, how many brown pelicans were there in the 1990s and 2000s that just either were never found or were found by a birder, but the birder was like, I'm not going to take the effort to try to get this out, and I don't know.
No. I'll tell you what happened. Starting in like 98-ish, when the internet came around, and then they started compiling a weekly rare bird alert. It didn't come out for a week. So by the time the thing comes out, you go down to the library, check your email. You're like, oh yeah, 6 days ago, a white pelican was sitting on Lake Lansing. I didn't know about it. Yep. And now it's gone.
Yep.
So
I was just listening to the ABA podcast, and Nate Swick was talking to Rosemary Moscow.
I was listening too. Yeah.
And she was talking about how when she was in college, the only rare bird alert there was there happened to be an ornithologist who wrote a weekly birding column in their local newspaper, wherever she grew up. So the only way that they could find out about it was once a week when the column came out. And it's like, it's better than nothing. You think about how lucky you'd have to be to get an ornithologist writing a weekly column in your local newspaper.
It's crazy. And those were unvetted reports because people would just call into a hotline with a landline phone and just leave a message. And all the compiler did was just take down all the messages and put it into one list.
That's right.
But half of them might have not been actual sightings. Like,
yeah. And we still deal with a little bit of that, but by and large, the sort of institutions that are forming and have formed around eBird and Merlin and all these, and even Facebook groups, I mean, it's like, it's pretty trustworthy these days.
It's getting, what I mean? It's like getting more vetted, more friendly, more welcoming. There's way more people involved in it. And the fact that information can go out like real time has been such a game changer.
Yeah.
I mean, you can literally be like an hour before dusk on a certain day and you get the note and you're like, oh, I'm in the car. And now you get a bird. You would have never in a zillion years would you have been able to get this bird.
So, dude, I'll tell you, the number one so far, I'm only 24, but the best period of my life by far was spring of 2020 because I had been a birder my entire life, but I had not been a serious birder. So there were tons of species like lark sparrow, blue grosbeak that were borderline rarities, rarities.
This is Kalamazoo.
Kalamazoo and all around, but just all these birds that I'd never seen before. And every single day I had the rare bird alert coming to my email, and I was off from school because it was totally asynchronous because of COVID. So I was living here back home with my parents after 6 months of being away at college. I was cooped up and I was like, I'm going to do some birding. I'm going to get into this whole eBird thing. I didn't know a lot about it at the time. And I would literally go out at dawn and not get home until after dusk. And I was chasing blue grosbeak, lark sparrow. I was chasing all the like Wilson's phalarope, you know what I mean? All this cool stuff that I'd never seen before, or if I had seen it, I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. And the amount of wonder that it fills you with.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like when people say like, I wish I could go back and watch Lord of the Rings for the first time. I wish I could go back and see all these species again for the first time, because the sense of wonder is totally unmatched. And to be fair, it's why we travel to places like Colombia and Costa Rica, because it comes right back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. You get humbled quickly when you go to Colombia. I mean, that place is insane.
But I'm curious, when you first started chasing birds, did you have an experience like that where it was just like every weekend it's, oh, we got to go chase this, we got to go chase that, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. But it's just, it was just like I was saying, we had to do it from a written report, and you're going like 3 days later, like, so there was, it was more frustrating. I'm not going to lie, because you're going there with such uncertainty about whether the bird might still be there. You don't have that so much. You have like, usually if it's a rare enough bird, there's real-time updates. It's still here, still here, still here.
Well, and you can hedge and say, I'm just not going to chase that bird because I don't think it's going to be there. And sometimes you're wrong, and it's a bummer.
Right.
So it's kind of a new issue, but by and large, it's really no comparison.
It really isn't. So that detection and participation bias really makes it easier for you young guys. And here's another, I mean, more broadly, I spent 10 years with no mentor. When I was a kid learning this stuff. All I had was a Peterson guide and myself. And nobody around me knew anything about this stuff. So it took me 10 years to piece together what you guys pieced together by hanging with the right people and having technology in 6 months to a year. I mean, I've seen that multiple times. You did it. Lots of other,
Talus,
the hungry people, they do it fast these days.
You know, one thing I will say that's almost the same, it's probably a little bit easier, but almost the same as it's always been, is migration watching and trying to find rarities by timing it to when they're going to be passing through. Like if you want to find a long-tailed Jaeger, you're probably not going to be able to chase one. Maybe once every 10 years, there'll be a chaseable long-tailed Jaeger.
Yeah.
But what that takes is the exact same thing it took in 1999, which was you got to go stand at the beach with the right winds on September 25th. And you got to hope that one flies by close enough that you can identify it. You know, the cameras make it easier. Don't get me wrong, but it is a bit of like time traveling a little bit in the birding world, you know?
Yeah. The cameras is a whole nother element of it too, right? I mean, because so many of these identifications are hard to do, or at least hard to convincingly do if you're doing it just visually and trying to report it to others, like in written word and stuff. Yeah. Versus now it's just like click photo straight on the internet. It's like everybody agrees instantaneously what it is.
Yeah. Well, and Jaegers are a perfect example of this because we have 3 Jaeger species that pass through once a year. Some of them are more common than others, but there are almost always identification problems
Always.
in every situation.
Really hard. Yeah.
So if you have a record from 1910 of Pomeranian Jaeger on Lake Erie,
Suspect.
Yeah. There's
100%.
just no way to know, because you know how many times pictures of a really good looking bird for Pomeranian Jaeger come out and then it comes closer? Dude, when I was doing the Miller Beach water bird count, I would be dead positive that I'm looking at a parasitic, because it's kind of the default.
Yep.
And then it comes closer and it's like, oh, it's a long-tailed. I would have called it. I genuinely would have reported it as a parasitic if I hadn't seen it closer. You know, and you do get humbled by that a little bit. And
that's when you need to go to SPA. You need to say Jaeger SPA first until it gets close enough to even confirm that it's the common one.
Which I've always been liberal with my use of the Jaeger SPA.
Yeah.
Or slashing long-tailed.
Yeah. You could do that too. Yeah.
We're getting in the weeds on this crap.
Yeah, I know. We tend to do that.
If we're dragging our listeners through mud they don't care about, we feel bad. But this is the stuff that we really nerd out on.
We
right?
definitely do. I know what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So when eBird first came out, this is how old school I guess I am. I don't think of myself that way, because I accept the technologies and the advancements. I like it. I like the change. But even when eBird started in 2003, my friends told me about it and showed it to me. And I'm like, why would I don't think I need to do this. This might be a little bit fuddy-duddy, but we were doing field journaling. Like, all of our stuff was you're handwriting this into a field journal. And so I have all those books. I mean, I've entered it all in eBird now. I went back and did that, but
you're like, I already have my records. I don't need the digital age.
Can you believe that? And I did it with cell phones too. I like held out for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. This guy had a walkie-talkie.
I had like 2 phones with a piece of string.
Yeah. Right.
But like,
did a telegram machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Telegraph. I don't even know how to say it.
Is that the
beep 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 beep
Morse
beep,
code?
Beep.
Yeah,
whatever that is. We have fun.
Well, it's almost true. So
yeah. Oh man.
So I think I mean, all of this stuff plays into it, but there really is a luck element like to birding that you can never eliminate. And the best you can do is to plug in, learn all you can learn about the birds. Like, how do you identify them? What do they sound like? What habitat are they in? What time of year is the perfect sweet spot for them? You know, you can do all that stuff, but there still comes a point where it's like a roll of the dice about when the hit actually finally happens.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting, you know?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And these things, like we're talking about finding extremely rare birds, it applies to every single bird you can find to try to identify.
Yeah.
The best example, I was reading on the plane, I was reading Ken Kaufman's Field Guide to Advanced Birding. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's a classic, man. Back from my day. Yeah.
It's so good. And he was talking about how important it is to understand phonology. Because if you're getting into birding,
timing,
the timing of migration and molt and all these things,
breeding,
and some of that is a lot more harder to get than other things. But great example, ruby crown kinglet and least flycatcher to a beginning birder look very similar.
Yeah.
But if you know that ruby crown kinglet shows up a full month before least flycatcher, you immediately can eliminate it, and you can start learning the bird for what it is and stop confusing it with impossibilities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's what takes somebody from beginning birding to advanced and even or intermediate and even advanced, because you don't even have to learn a lot of these field marks right off the bat to be able to be 100% confident about your IDs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, you know, to wrap it up, Will, you can learn all the things about the birds. You can be out looking, you can have your targets. And if you were just like automatically going to see everything, it'd be cool, but there wouldn't be like the satisfaction of waiting longer and being like, why is it that this one bird is taking forever to show up? Like for me, like Brown Pelican, plenty of other examples. I'm still waiting on Ross's gull, sage thrasher, right on down the line. There's tons of them.
Sure.
But I think the really awesome aspect of this is the fact that you're not going to know when you see it. It really makes the payout that much more exciting when you finally get it. You know,
I think it tickles the exact same part of your brain that literally pulling that slot at the casino or, you know, playing blackjack. you can be as good at cards as you want, but until you get that first royal flush or whatever it is, you know what I mean?
Or like if you're a poker player, you could have the best read and play on a hand, but you may not get the lucky card on the river.
Mhm.
Like it's just that. But when it finally happens, it creates a lot of like tension and frustration too. Like admittedly, when you miss something, but
Yeah.
When you finally get it though, I think it really makes it way more satisfying and worthwhile.
Yeah, I'm biased obviously, but it's got to be the most gratifying hobby in the world if you're dedicated, because you do get lucky from time to time if you're dedicated and you go out enough. Or even if you have your feeders set up, eventually you'll get something cool at your feeders.
100%.
Yeah.
And you don't need to leave your house. That's the thing. All you need to do is just pay attention in the backyard. Even, I mean, somebody in New York City, you know this from last summer or last fall, he's sitting in a balcony in Brooklyn, New York, looks up and there's a seabird going over. He has no habitat whatsoever. It's just all concrete. And it was a red-footed booby. Like it literally can be anywhere at any time, you know?
And we were trying to keep this PG, but no, we're kidding.
Yeah, not me.
Well, did we do it?
I think we did it.
Well, guys, thanks for bearing with us on our sort of experimental first time recording together. If you like our content, please like, share, and subscribe. We finally reached 300 subscribers. We're in the beginning of this journey, and we are so glad to have you guys coming along with us. 300 is a big mile marker, I guess, and 400 is coming up soon. I sure hope. Please share with your friends if you think they'd like it.
And get out there and pull that birding slot machine on your own and see what you find.
Absolutely.
Peace.
Peace.